Have you heard about Anchor? Well, it's one of the easiest ways to create a podcast. Not only is it 100% free, but it has a variety of creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or a computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast to other sites such as Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many others for you. And Anchor even allows you to make money from your podcast without a required minimum listenership. So whether you've been in the podcasting game for a long time or you're completely new to it, Anchor is so user-friendly that it's basically your one-stop shop for making a podcast. So what are you waiting for? Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Hello and welcome to First Paso, a show where we learn together how to take that first paso toward becoming the best versions of ourselves. My name is Candace Olushla, and today is kind of heavy for me, and I know it's heavy for those that are on this podcast with me. It's been 2 years. It's not even. It hasn't even been 2 years completely since um, we had news break out across the globe about George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, like so many, uh, so many injustice cases that were being made known to the public. And it's February of 2022, and we're still having to deal with this. So thought I would have a conversation today with some friends, as well as family, and talk about how we're feeling just as Black people in America and in Canada. Um, because in case you didn't know, Canada is also dealing with this struggle just as much as America is. So that's something that we'll definitely talk about today. But um, we just want to have an honest conversation, unedited, uncut, just real. So I'm Candace. I'm the host of this podcast, and I'll let them introduce yourselves. Greg, do you want to go first?
All right. Well, my name is Pastor Greg. I am the children and family pastor of a small church in Nelson, British Columbia. I've been actively passionate in advocating for social justice and seeing racial reconciliation in certain places in Canada, particularly where racism seems to be a conversation that not a lot of people are willing to have, or a conversation that people always like to save for the absolute last moment when you feel like, oh, like we'll get to this when it gets really, really bad. But I've been wanting to introduce these conversations more and more in predominantly white spaces where it feels like this is something that usually cannot be brought up easily or cannot be discussed without pulling on the necks or pulling on the shirts of people to say the least, and just shaking them awake. But in all honesty, even in Canada, where a lot of people might feel like the degree of racism or how racism is woven into society, and you might look at it and think it's not as serious, but we are dealing with our own struggles and our own turmoils here. But I'm happy to just be here and provide a little bit of insight as to like how we progressed, or what feels like progression over the last 2 years, and other ways that we can look forward and just kind of keep looking forward to brighter days.
Thanks, Greg. Faith?
Hi, everyone. I'm Faith. I went to grad school with Candace at GW, and now I'm a public health professional. I'm really happy to be a part of this conversation here. I am also host of a podcast called Ebony Group Chat, where we focus on social justice issues and uplifting Black women. in my background, I was president of my Black Student Union in undergrad for 3 years. And I also facilitate some Black affinity groups at my current job. So, Candace, thank you for inviting me here today.
It's good to have you here, Faith. Kel?
Yep. So my name is Kellen. I'm Candace's little brother, and I am a recently graduated doctor, and I'm getting ready to start residency. And that's basically it. Not too much.
Thanks, Kel. So, I don't know if any of you guys wanted to start, but I know Kellen and I have recently been talking about just recent news with the Amir Locke case and how that was too close to home in a layer of ways, not only just being a no-knock warrant, and we had already had that outrage with Breonna Taylor, and the Breonna Taylor incident happened only an hour from where I live. And so just to hear that that was happening again and to watch the footage this time clearly was so nauseating and gut-wrenching that you just can't get it out of your head once you've seen it once. That's been bothering me a lot. And then the what was her name, Kellen? Her the young lady who was murdered after her Bumble date. So allegedly speaking, um, we've been talking about her, Lauren Smith Fields, I think is her name.
Lauren Smith.
And that whole case has so many weird holes surrounding it, and how it's being handled has been equally irritating to watch and listen to. And that's just like the other day, like stuff that we're hearing about right now this year. I don't know if you guys have any other cases that you can think of over the last couple of years that you still think about or you still try to process.
Um, for me personally, when I hear of police shootings, I've become so numb to it. Um, I am from Minnesota, born and raised. I just moved to DC in 2019. Um, and I think for a lot of people, um, they've always associated Minnesota with being Minnesota nice. And that racism doesn't really exist here. But Minnesota is one of the most segregated states. It also has the worst disparities in terms of health, education, wealth, home ownership, all the economic disparities amongst Black families living in Minnesota and white families. My mom is a victim of police brutality that I witnessed when I was 9 years old. And so nothing ever shocks me, and I become so numb to it. And I was having a conversation with somebody about this the other day, and how like we as Black people, it doesn't shock us and it doesn't like hurt me to my core the way I know it should, because it's so normalized seeing Black death and trauma on TV, and it trends, and we're sharing these videos, and I have just told myself I can no longer watch that. And I know a couple of local on the ground activists in Minneapolis who've been doing this work for a number of years. And when I heard about Amir Locke's case, it honestly, I continued my day because it did not shock me. The Minneapolis Police Department has had a long history of killing African American men. Just when George Floyd happened in 2020, my brother was living like a couple blocks away from where George Floyd was killed. And I remember he went back and stayed with my parents in the suburbs for a couple weeks because he just was so fearful. And at the same time, he was home with my parents, but we live in a predominantly white city, and he was still fearful for his life. And then you think of Philando Castile, and it happens year after year in this place, and nothing has been done. Um, Jacob Frey, the mayor of Minneapolis, who ran on a platform that he was going to make so many changes, he backtracked on every single thing that he said. And it just hurts to see the youth hurting, especially because I don't know if you all know, but North Minneapolis is predominantly Black. And there have been a lot of killings amongst youth in the last couple, I would say the last year. The North Minneapolis community is hurting right now. A 15-year-old boy was just killed walking home from school by bullet. Honor roll student, he was on the basketball team, the football team. HBO was doing a documentary on their team. And a bus driver was just shot with kids on the bus recently. And so there's a lot of hurt and pain going on in the community, and it's layered with so many instances of hurt by the Minneapolis Police Department. And a lot of people have just become numb to it. So I sometimes I'm at a loss of words for now.
Yeah. That numbness is real. I feel like I teeter-totter that line of irritation, frustration, hope, being hopeful, but then being numb. Like, I feel like I'm right on the line of sometimes just feeling completely numb to it, especially living in and working in predominantly white spaces my whole life, and being continuously disappointed in people that they say they see you and they say they love you, but then when you talk to them about these things, they don't respond to you. So I don't know if it would be different if I lived in or was surrounded by Black people most of my life or not, but there's I I sit with that numbness feeling more now than I used to before, I think. What about you, Greg?
Well, like you said, Candace, you predominantly work in you're a part of predominantly white spaces, and that's been me for the most part of my life. I've always felt like I am yeah, obviously I am the minority in almost every place, but not only that, I always feel like no matter where I go, no matter how much the headlines change or the stories changes or the name changes, well, nothing actually really changes, or we see positive change coming or being presented to Black people, and we have that numbness that you speak about and that Faith is speaking about, where this is the same story that has been part of our lives as long as we've known it. It's a different day, it's a different name, but it's literally the exact same thing. And what I found most challenging is trying to at least have some sense of the pain that we feel being empathized at a very, very basic level by the people around us. Because the one thing that I've noticed more in the last 2 years since George Floyd was murdered, is a lot of people typically like to present us with the narrative that we're just making everything about race when it isn't to them. When the issue of race always seems to be so far beyond their comprehension that they think we are pointing fingers or blaming or placing blame somewhere where it shouldn't be. And the thing is, like, how do you combat that? How do you like form a response to that understanding where you feel like you don't want to feel like you are attacking the other person? Because again, in predominantly white spaces, as soon as there is a rebuttal or a pushback in any sort of form, they always feel that they are being attacked when they're simply presenting a perspective. But it's difficult when almost everything that we know is associated with feeling pain and trying to rationalize or come to an understanding in our heads, like, how did this happen? Why did this situation have to result in another person being killed? Why did this situation result in a person being shot multiple times? Why did this situation result in literally lethal force, deadly lethal force, sometimes not even in a matter of seconds? And what is the common factor, and why do we see this predominantly more with people of color and not other people? And why is that there? So being in a lot of predominantly white spaces, when there's that pushback or when there's um that counter perspective, or a lot of people like to use the words playing devil's advocate. Maybe it wasn't about race, or maybe it was something different. How do you form responses to that? That's one of the few things that I want to know. And I also am trying to find a healthier way of looking at all these situations and just going, okay, can I look at these situations, look at what has happened, and still remain hopeful? Can I still find some sense of hope and positivity, even with all these negative stories and headlines coming at us? How do we find joy in times like these?
Ugh. See, all of us on here, we're we're Christians. And so that like that's a question I ask myself. Um I Greg, I had called you a couple nights ago after church, and when I got off the phone with you, I called my mom to explain it to her, and she's a very gracious person. But I like at that point I was like, I can't, and I feel bad for saying this because I know that, you know, in Christianity we're taught that God's grace is sufficient. We should extend grace no matter what. But in that moment, I was so enraged that I broke down and I said, how did Jesus do? How did he do this? Because I feel like that's the only way I'm gonna be able to keep doing this, if I figure out how did Jesus do this without wanting to just throw in the towel, because I'm frustrated already. I'm frustrated. I'm becoming numb. I'm tired. How am I supposed to keep extending grace to people that don't pay attention or choose not to pay attention to the outcry of people? And it's a cry that hasn't stopped. Like it has been a perpetual cry for over 400 years. Like, how tuned out are you? I can't process that. It's especially from white evangelical Christians. I think white evangelical Christian, white any kind of Christian, have as a collective have really, they've disappointed me but have not shocked me, if that makes sense. Like, I'm not surprised, but I'm very disappointed um in what now makes the messaging sound very two-faced when you talk about God's love and his grace is sufficient, and love to the people, Jesus died for all, we all have the same blood running through our veins. Like I cannot keep hearing the Christian cliches anymore. I literally can't. I'm so over them at this point that I I now wrestle with how I can keep my composure in predominantly white spaces, especially amongst white Christians. How do I keep my composure when inside of me I want to scream? But if I scream, they're either going to pretend that I'm not screaming, or they're going to go, "Oh, I'm sorry that you're screaming," or they're just going to stare at me awkwardly, as in a, "I don't know what to do about your screaming." Either result makes me feel very isolated and even more frustrated to where my scream wants to be more. So it's like, I the to me, the easy answer would be to, well, just don't be in white spaces. But I also don't see that being the resolution either. So I don't know if I'm supposed to stay quiet and just keep it to myself in white spaces and cry and scream at home, or if I'm supposed to allow my brother and sister to hear my burden and sit in the discomfort of the fact that I'm screaming until they figure out how to adopt a scream that they should have, that I thought they should have, and do something with me, or tell me that they don't want me to scream anymore. Because if you tell me you don't want me to scream anymore, okay, that's another thing I would have to process and figure out. But as long as you're staring at me blank faced or quiet or not looking at all, just like pretending like it's not happening, the more I have to decide if I need to scream or if I need to be quiet, if I need to, I don't want to assimilate, because that also doesn't help either. It's so many questions. And I think about you know, the Makia Bryants of the world. Like, are you not outraged for a child? Can you not, do you not have a cry in your heart for a child that's wrongfully shot? That's not, it doesn't hit you at all. Even just hearing it in passing, it doesn't, it, okay. Like, I don't know how to put that seed of outrage in you, which only makes me feel more numb and more irritated and then more numb again. It's a lot. I don't know.
Yeah, Candace, it is a lot. And I think as Black people, there's so many layers that we have to navigate in this world and how we choose to show up. Because when we're angry, there's so many stigmas um, that people perceive about us. So even I've been in spaces where I want to articulate myself in a clear manner, but I'm told I'm intimidating folks or I'm scaring folks. Um, and it's like, why? I'm just having a simple conversation and expressing my frustrations in the same manner that you all are. And when I think of us just navigating this world as Black people, we can't do anything. We can't take a run without being shot. We can't go into our own apartment without being killed. And it's like, what can we do? Because there's a situation in this world in which a Black person was killed for simple being themselves. Um, and it's fearful because I forgot his name, but I always think of the man that was killed when he was simply going into his apartment. And it's like, what can we do? We can't live. And how long the justice system takes just to even indict or arrest these cops is mind blowing. And similar to the case with the Tinder Bumble date, where cops just let the man go free without questioning. And Black people were arrested without questions ever being asked in the first place. Um, There's just so many layers that we have to navigate. And it's like, that's why I really try to take time to find joy in in every day, whether it's 10 minutes or whatever I can do. I do try to find like little moments of joy and celebrations because you can become so lost. And I remember in 2020 taking 2 weeks off work because I was just so distraught. And why I made conscious decision not to watch Black bodies being killed anymore. I think after George Floyd, I was very traumatized. I was very hurt. Um, and to this day, I just can't bring myself to watch any videos of Black trauma because now it's seems to me like it's a trend, and it's so common to see it on social media, and that's why I think a lot of folks have become numb to it. And now, like even the way reporters share things on the news, it's like everyone just wants to be the first to report and have the video, and people don't realize this was a person. This was someone's son, brother, daughter, loved one. And we're just sharing these videos like it's nothing, like this is someone's family member. So I always want to be super cautious about that and trying to share my anger because it's one thing like to not feel like I can share my true frustration in like spaces. But then as Black people, we forget that like we also have other things going on in our lives. And it's painful to have to relive this trauma every single day. And social media and the news continue to run these news stories and share them in the worst ways. It's like when someone is killed, instead of highlighting the great person they were, they criminalize us right away. It's like, think of George Floyd, and they were like finding his arrest that he's had and seeing all these negative things. At the end of the day, I don't care what that person did. The way they died was not right, and they did not deserve that.
Man, I agree. Kel, what about
Yeah.
you, man?
I'm I like I can't get over how I was like incredibly frustrated over the Smithfields case. Just because like I feel like for me there's been this like very recurrent theme of I just don't know where the need for like justice is anymore. Like, but like, where is it in your heart? Like, I, I feel like I just keep wondering. Like, I feel like this can't be just bias. Like, really? Like, is this really just bias? This seems like I like there's just seems to be such a deep intentionality to it, and I feel like the Smithfields case really hit me hard in that regard because I'm like there's so like there's this is not bias, this is just a downright intentionality, and I have to keep asking myself wh- how do we want to run these legal systems, how do we want to run our like our security system, our police forces. Like, how do we even want to run this? Who's this? Who has decided that they want to promote criminality amongst the people who are supposed to uphold the law? Because if the people who are supposed to uphold the law are not going to uphold the law and are just going to uphold it for a very select group of people, as far as I'm concerned, they're not upholding anything. And so for me, I'm just like, what are we doing? Why are we making our streets more dangerous? Why are we literally going out of our way to make America's streets more dangerous? This is literal insanity. Like this is like I sometimes I think about it, I'm just like this is I don't know if I keep thinking about this self-destructive behaviors, people things that people think are fine, things that people think, oh, it's not going to hurt me, but at the end of the day, it has to be in a roundabout and unfortunate way. That always seems to come back. Like it's not, and like I think about like January 6th, and I'm just like that was what I was like. I'm like so not surprised because I'm like that's the kind of self-destructiveness that happens when you continue to promote criminal behavior in your own people. And I'm like I just sometimes I really worry that like I worry that a lot of our white counterparts aren't seeing that and aren't seeing just how dangerous it is to be numb to this, to be um just not present anymore and not it's indifferent. And I keep wondering like I don't know if do you guys realize that this is destroying you too. This is destroying your sense of moral judgment. This is destroying your sense of everything that is right. This is literally destroying you, and you don't seem to care. If you work with, if you're not going to help us, do you realize that technically, like, I mean, the way I think about moral judgment, I'm like, if you're okay with it, I don't know if you realize that's turning you into to a criminal too. Like slowly, it is slowly just eating away at your moral judgment, and I get very very concerned. I get very 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 concerned.
That's a good point, but even on that point, at what time has America historically provided the mindset in white Americans to recognize or receive that question for themselves? Like there's not a single point in history that there's oh, we should think about this. Like, oh, this is probably one of the first times, to be honest. And that's because little old Gen Z over here they're like, hey, this is psycho. Like this whole ship is crazy. And they're being vocal about it. Um, but I couldn't point out a time where there's a, a a moment where the systems that be are trying to highlight that this problem, quote unquote, with the Black people is ultimately a white people problem. It's always been a them and then an us. Like they have their problem, keep their problem in their communities over there, and then we're protected until it becomes a part of the white community. And then it's not a problem that you separate. Now we need to do something about it. This is where I get irritated. This is where I know I got irritated in pharmacy school talking about the war on drugs and all of a sudden we're hearing about, wow, we need to implement things to help these people who are addicted to drugs. I was like, no, I mean, am I really the only person in this room that remembers when this was a whole situation back in the 70s and 80s? And they were like, oh man, the war on drugs, Black people, lock them up. And now we're trying to have facilities to correct the same drug problem that was caused on the Black community, like intentionally. So, what now that it's touched white soil, it's now like the crisis of America, and we need to liberate the what? Like I can't process it. How people miss it at the same time. If if that's the narrative that's been passed on to you for generation to generation to generation to generation to generation, it takes personal deep like work to intentionally see and receive the injustice that's actually happening. I mean, think about critical race theory right now. Like this shouldn't be a difficult conversation. It's like, wow, we were taught a narrative that wasn't entirely true. How about we teach everyone the truth? That that is the basis of critical race theory right now. And it's an oh my gosh, like no, I can't. I really liked the narrative I got as a kid. I don't want my kid to have any other type of narrative. Let's keep the whole George Washington wooden teeth story alive and keep it pushing. Like, let's go with that. I like that. The little picture with Aunt Jemima and she's all, making her pot of whatever for the massa and the fam. Let's keep that. That is way more comfortable. I don't want my kid to be uncomfortable. And it's like there's no space to there's no systemic space to say that sitting uncomfortable even for a semester of a class is nothing, literally 0%, negative 5,000% close to the weight, the scars, the destruction, the loss of life, the fear, the retaliation, the lingo that makes you think you're crazy to even say this is a race problem. Like, nowhere in comparison to the weight that Black people have to carry daily. And that's generational for Black people in America. And what's been frustrating to me too, talking with you, Greg, and like Greg and I talk all the time. And the things that you send me about Canada, I'm over here trying to figure out what is happening with Canada. Because in case y'all didn't know, because I didn't know until Greg highlighted this for me, we have Canadians who, for some reason, think they're Americans in the sense that they have Trump gear, MAGA hats. They had the mini version of the insurrection when we had the insurrection. Like, I don't understand why there's a whole sect of Canada that's trying to be a mini US, or like why I can't process why even Trump's name in Canada is beneficial, quote unquote, for white Canadians. Is there not a Trump equivalent that they could use? Like, I don't understand. I mean, not that you want them to use that as like a means to get what they want, but I just don't understand why that's a thing in Canada. Can you explain that? Do you know why?
I have to say that this is turned into I'd say appropriation. I don't even know if that's the right thing to call it, but it feels like appropriation because it's essentially turned into this is the brand of I'm a free thinker. I'm gonna believe whatever I want. I will listen to so and so's podcast, either have it be so and so Shapiro or so and so Rogan, whoever is saying everything that I want to believe, and I'm going to take them at their word because this is my form of research. Apparently, it is me search. I want to challenge people. Come up with an opinion on how you think the world is running or how you think the world is functioning in a way without using the words I, me, or my, and actually come and tell me what's going on without letting either bias or personal research or any other outside sources kind of influence your way of thought or whatnot. But essentially what's going on in Canada right now is they're calling it a very, very vocal protest. But the thing is, this is not just an isolated part of Canada. It's literally everywhere. It's all across Canada every single day of this. And the thing is, when the pandemic started, we had this thing where we were really, really saluting, like we were saluting the healthcare workers and the first responders. Right now, we all got out at like 7 o'clock at night, and we all made some noise, and we thanked everybody for going to the hospitals and help keep people safe and trying to combat this thing as much as possible. Now it's turned into, let's not just do this at 7 o'clock at night. Let's make this noise every hour of the day for hours on end because we just want the pandemic to be over. That's essentially what this is. They want the pandemic to end on their terms because they're tired, they're frustrated. Everything that's going on right now is a massive inconvenience to them with mass mandates and vaccine mandates. Everyone just saying end all the mandates. Let's just get everything back to normal because we feel like we're ready, without even accounting for the fact that there's still thousands of people in the hospital. Thousands of people are still getting sick. This thing is still spreading. It is not over. People want it to be over, and they think that they have the power to do that. But along with that, there's a word that's been deeply entrenched in this protest called freedom, because they're saying, because this is Canada, the true north, strong and free, we want to exercise this freedom and do what we want. We have the right to protest, to make our voices heard and whatnot. And I look at all that and just go, okay, you know what? Like, fair, fine, that's fair. That's fair. You are free to express your opinion, express your mindset and your thoughts and whatnot. But a lot of conflicting ideologies and theologies have been interwoven into this protest, which is why it has been very, very negative for all of Canada. It's been very embarrassing, and also has been incredibly painful for people of color, particularly like anybody who's not white, which looks at this protest. Or I shouldn't speak for everyone, but a large majority of us has looked at this and just gone, like, what happened? Are we going through 2020 all over again? Because at this protest, which has been going on for the last 2 weeks, is still going on. We've had people yelling racial slurs. We've had people attacking communities where there's LGBTQ support. They're throwing rocks at windows. They're defecating in public on statues and monuments. They're waving Confederate flags. They are waving swastikas. They are basically saying that we're living in Nazi Germany. They've compared what's going on with the mask mandates and vaccine mandates to the Holocaust. It has been literally one of the most this has been one of the two most embarrassing weeks of my life being a Canadian, seeing all this going on and not having like a voice to look at everyone and just go, look, guys, because a lot of these protesters, a lot of this the organizations from the support, they all claim to be evangelical Christians. They all claim to 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 acknowledge Christianity as their primary faith, and to hold to that truth that Jesus is Lord, like, and have that mentality. And yet all of this is still going on with the Trump flags, the Confederate flags, the Nazi flags, the public acts of indecency, the racial slurs, all of that stuff. And nobody's called it out. Nobody's looked at what's going on and just be like, hey, you think maybe we're taking this a little bit too far? We think maybe we're crossing a line. We're going a little bit too far. And yes, people are allowed to have freedom of expression. I don't want to say that you can't have freedom of expression, but when your freedom of expression comes at the expense of the people who the entire world literally had to rally behind 2 years ago, for the sake of even getting the officers who killed George Floyd arrested, who had to rally behind the people who killed Ahmaud Arbery arrested. We had to make our voices known, even to just get them arrested, and basically lift up our voices saying, Black people, we see you, we hear you. And it feels like a majority of Canada threw that all away in the last 2 weeks because it interfered with them getting what they want. Apparently, racism is not a deal breaker for a lot of white people in the pursuit of them getting what they want. That is what's pained me the most over the last 2 weeks.
I don't even know what to say to that. Like, this I need someone else to say something because I need to sit with that. I don't
I'll
understand.
jump in. I'll jump in with the only thing that I could like hear, like the one thing that I could hear in everything you were saying, Greg, is feelings over facts. Feelings over facts. It just keeps happening. Like like this, like I just, I just don't, I don't know where this ideology comes from, but it never produces good results. It just doesn't. So and there there just seems to be throughout white evangelical Christianity and a lot of whites in general, there's just this need to make sure I'm okay, that I feel okay. And if that means hurting you or pushing you out of the way or making sure I'm above you or stepping on you, it doesn't matter. My feelings matter more. I just don't. I don't understand it. I don't understand the ideology. I don't know why they were not raised to think that facts matter and that they matter more than how you feel. Like feelings matter. Yeah, feelings matter. That's why we comfort. That's why people comfort each other when they feel bad. But the facts is how you draw your line, and that facts is how you stay within the realm of, you know, reasonability, within the realm of sanity, within the realm of everything that is good. Like you need facts, and you need to stay within the facts. And it's just very concerning when your feelings are just mm. When feelings are king, everybody loses. and and even the people who think their feelings they're winning because they're making their feelings heard and they're getting what they want. No, they're losing. They don't realize how much they're losing. Everybody's losing. This is just a losing game for everybody. It's so strange. It's so strange. Gosh.
It's also gross. Like I'm sitting here with the whole defecation thing, and I'm like, why? Like, and see, here's the thing. This is what really ticks me off, at the sense that you like, oh, that is the that is the epitome of white privilege, that you can do something so egregious for days, like weeks at a time, that if a black person were to do the same thing, do you know how soon they would probably be killed? Like just at the idea that they're pretending to pull their pants down to defecate on the street, they could die in a matter of seconds. And you can do this for weeks and nobody says anything. There's like, oh, okay, yeah, I feel you. What? Like my my brain cannot wrap itself around how, like, why is it so freaking obvious to us? Here's the thing. Honestly, I I don't always believe people when they don't say that they see race. I really don't. Like, you have to be lying to yourself half the time to say, like, oh no, I don't see race. I think it's a way to soothe your own guilt or to soothe your own desire to stay in comfort for yourself, to not see how drastically obvious this is. Like, you can't tell me this is not obvious. I don't understand. Blind people can see that this is obvious. Helen Keller would have been able to say this is a problem. Like, you can't tell me. You can't tell me, and you can't tell me in the name of Jesus. Like, please do not bring Jesus into your swastika life. Please do not bring Jesus into your Trump flag life. Don't bring Jesus into the Confederate flag protest. No, like, do not put that on Jesus. Don't put that on Jesus at all. Like, period, point blank. If I have to put this PSA out any louder, do not put the decisions that you're choosing to make out of your intense feelings about how you just want to be super comfortable on the Lord Jesus Christ. Because at what point would you see Jesus defecating somewhere to prove a point? Not a thing. So the whole evangelicals would never do the insurrection, that's BS, because I can list you off 3 people that I know personally that are very much evangelical Republican that were at the insurrection and were very proud of it. And 2 of them have been arrested and lost their jobs. I can like the whole the whole premise that if we just kumbaya our way into out of the racism conversation, we'll be fine, while at the same time not wanting the true American history to be taught. To be honest, I'm sure a lot of it is the fact that American history, I'm so sorry this is affecting Canada too. Like this is just I'm irritated on so many levels. The history of America is so rated X. Like, how do you tell a child how rated X their country's history is? And it still is. We've not had any other rating than X. I don't know if you live in your little PG bubble. Good for you. You in the Barney and Friends bubble, rated G. Good for you. But the history of America is rated X. Okay? X. And we were taught a very PG, not even PG-13, like a PG version of American history. And now that we all know it wasn't as PG as you wanted it to be, and we want to let the people know how rated X it actually was and still is, you mad. You mad because the history, the PG version suits you. It suits the stories you were told. It suits the history that you fell in love with about how your grandfather came from Ireland and worked really hard and struggled to make his name known. I'm not going to take away from the fact that your grandparents did some hard things coming to America, but they came. Like that's just like they came. They came. They weren't drugged here. They weren't whipped here. They weren't raped their way here. Like they came just to start from there. They didn't even start at the same point in this whole process. They came. They bought a ticket and they came. that's the frustrating part. They came. And like the evangelical story of Jesus being like this awesome hippie kid who had a really nice kumbaya message and it's just like, everybody, let's just love my dad and he's amazing. You should try it. It's great. And going to heaven. Like so chill. And the Bible is rated X. But if you think if you don't see yourself as an Israelite under the reign of Pharaoh, then yeah, I would assume your version of how you interpret Christianity and then try to make it make sense in your little world is absolutely PG and fun and just cute. But it's not cute. There's nothing cute about this. This is not cute at all. Like, this is disgusting. This is sick. And it's continuing. And the audacity. Like, this is where people like Candace Owens really piss me off. Because you have the people that try to join in on the insanity that race was never the foundation of this country, and poor Canada has just received the spillover. Like it has spread. Okay, I gave an analogy recently. I went to speak at a school. It was a racial conversation that we were having, and I gave them the analogy that it's like when you've walked into someone's house And you're like, oh my gosh, your carpet is so unique. I've never seen a red carpet before. And you're like, yeah, it didn't start that way. It's like blood that spilled over, like just everywhere. And now we just have blood. It's like it's blood stained. It's dry in most parts. There's still areas that it's fresh blood. And now we've been trying to scrub it out for a long time. And it's hard to tell where we've actually been working on because there's still blood spillover. Because like every time we scrub somewhere, someone ends up pouring more blood in that spot. So, but here we are. It's just our house. It is the foundation of our house. We laid down this nice little blanket and we called it our founding fathers. And then they took that blanket and covered it all in blood and said, this is the foundation. And that blood was on the back of racism. Like that's what it was. It is the foundation of everything you see here. You want to talk about economics? It's sitting on the foundation of race. If you want to talk about any kind of public health, anything, it is sitting on the foundation of race. You can't separate it out. It's in the fibers. It's in the fibers. So when you have people, you literally have Canadians. I love that you use the word brand. And like you use the word brand, Faith, you use the word trend. Like it's trendy to be doing this in white spaces. It is on brand to be doing this in white spaces, to allow this, and then to allow people to feel slightly crazy to question if it's race. Let me make you question your own knowledge and recognition of the fact that this is a racial situation. And I'll just keep trying to use that. It's really not for you, it's for me. It's so I can feel comfortable. So if I can make you feel insane, I get to calm my inner freak out down. So everyone gets on my page so we can go back to my PG life. No, this is not PG. There's no children's programs here. None, zero, nothing. It's in our healthcare system. Like the number of times that you question how in healthcare, and I think COVID is exposing this a lot and the public health ramifications of this, on how healthcare is set up to have Black and brown people die at faster rates because they don't even teach you in healthcare schools how to notice things for Black people. And then you add the layer of racism and bias, and it's literally, it's like purposefully created so you don't know how to do anything with a Black person if they come into the hospital and, oh, look, they died. Shame. There's no need for Black women to be dying at alarming rates for having a child in America. There's no need for that. But here we are. There's no need for a Black person to come in with hives and you can't tell because you've never seen hives on a Black person before, and then they can't breathe and they die. Like this shouldn't be a thing, but it is. You have whole communities set up. We went to Philly last year, me and Kellon and our family, and just watching the structure of the city. I'm like, you couldn't be any more intentional than this to create a whole city where you would have to drive like in your own car 40 minutes before you see something with vegetables that were not in a can. 40 minutes from Philadelphia. You have to go to the Reading Terminal Market, the historical market, before you see something green in a store. Every single corner you turn, there's a corner store, there's a McDonald's, there's a Burger King, there's Hoagies, like nothing that allows you to thrive physically. But then in your medical research, you're going to say, oh, well, diabetes, hypertension, high cholesterol, That's a Black people thing. We just so happen to see it more. No, your system set it up to where that's exactly what's going to happen to Black people, and they're gonna die. So when you're killing Black people from the structure of their own communities that they've been put into historically, pushed into, and pushed out of, and moved around, that you keep pushing them and moving them into these spaces where they can't get food to survive like a decent human being. And then you have the justice system that's basically the good boys club, just winking and turning over evidence like they've never seen the evidence in their life, or like it's not happening. And then they try to do it and then say we're a nation founded on Christian principles. Like you can't do that. You can't put all those three in the same pot and say it's a beautiful melting pot. Come over to America. It's a great place to live. You can't tell me that. It doesn't make any sense. It's mortifying.
Very mortifying. I think this country was set up like this. And that's fact. It was designed to benefit specifically white men. And then even when I think of like affirmative action, that was set up to benefit white women. But everyone always thinks it was set up for Black people. And what have we really gained from affirmative action? I also wanted to point out that, oh my gosh, lost my point. But let's see if I can find it. I think the way this country was designed was that it was to cater to white people. And I think of history, America loves to separate itself from the violence they've caused, specifically to Native Americans and African Americans in this country. And when you look at history, look at history books, the way the story is told, especially the civil rights movement, is that Martin Luther King came, well, Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves, then Martin Luther King came and he solved racism. And the civil rights movement happened, Black people have equal rights. And so we shouldn't complain about anything because we can vote now. But we really can't. Like, if you look at the southern states, there's still so many examples of voter suppression going on. And you can see it, like, it's physically there. But no, if one Black person has excelled, they think that's the case for all of us. And that we're this huge monolith. So when Obama became president, it really was, you guys should shut up and not complain about anything. And one, they made his job 10 times more difficult than it had to be. I mean, I personally think that being president is the worst job in America. But when Obama was elected, it really was, okay, shut up, you guys have a Black president now and shouldn't complain about anything. But life was still hard and we were still experiencing the same things. Just because there was a Black person in the Oval Office doesn't mean that, you know, racism was gone forever. It still exists in every core of this country. And that's why these parents are afraid of teaching critical race theory in schools, because they know that some of, like, the civil rights movement was not that long ago. Some of these people folks are 70, 80, 90 years old who lived through that movement, who have lived through lynchings and whatnot. And they put these things into our history books and kind of make it seem like the sunshine effect and put things in black and white. And I remember seeing my first in-color photo of MLK, and I was like, oh, like, there was color back then? Yes, there was. And it was just eye-opening to me that they did this on purpose to make it seem like it was so long ago and that's not their history. But this is the history of this country. And we can see it at the economic level. We see it in healthcare. We see it in our education system. We see it in our police. And most importantly, we see it in our government. Why do we still have people from like the 1940s in office who lived through some of these lynchings and attended some of these lynchings? For a fact, like, I think of Ruby Bridges, and she's not that old, honestly. And some of these folks that are in office, their family members were probably sitting there harassing her when she was going to school every single day. And I think that's why a lot of these folks are afraid of teaching a lot of critical race theory in schools. It's simply the truth, and America wants to whitewash it and make it seem like it wasn't as violent as this country is. This country is very, very violent. Even thinking of like the whole 9/11 situation. I just watched a documentary on Netflix. If you haven't seen it, it pretty much exposes the United States government and how we've been violent for centuries. And we portray this image that we are these peacemakers when we really are not. And everything is about economic gain and power and how they want to truly control us at the facet of every single entity of this country. And now my question is, what can we do? Because I think we can run for political office, but I've had positions, I've interned at every level of government, and politics is a game, and it's a white man's game. And so, how do we dismantle the system? Because everyone's like, reform, reform, reform. No, we need to abolish and dismantle the system and rebuild it and redesign it. Because the way it was designed, like, I don't think reform can happen at the end of the day. It is so embedded into this country, down into what's it called? Our rights and everything, the Bill of Rights and everything like that, where we have to completely dismantle the system and restructure it from the ground up. And I'm excited for the young generation of this country because I think that given with social media and technology and everything, I would say more people are doing their own reading, and people are, I would say younger people are mixing a lot more with each other, where we see the movement now is young people. Like when I go to protests, it's really created by young people. The protest that just happened in Minneapolis, they were organized by high schoolers. Like these kids are actually having a huge wake up call, and I'm seeing that a lot of them are calling their family members out. Some people have cut off family members, and we didn't see that in older generations. So I do have hope in this next generation, but it starts with getting a lot of these people out of office and the people that hold power. Because personally, if you were born in 1930, 1940, you're supposed to be at home retiring. Like you should not be making laws in this country because your mindset has not shifted from 1930, 1940.
Yes. 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 Like all of that. It's like, don't why are you on your hands and knees scrubbing the carpet? Just rip up the carpet. Get a just tear down the house. It's infested. We're just gonna have to build something different. Like it's it's so baked in. I think Greg Greg, you said that it's like it's baked into this cake. Like I'm sorry, if you can separate out the eggs from the batter and the icing and stuff once the cake is done, you have figured out something that I don't even think Jesus knows how to do, because like that I don't know how it, it's just make a new cake. Just make a new cake. You might as well, because it's it's like how do you remedy over 400 years of bloody carpet or of poisoned cake? Like we're just eating it. We're just walking on this. This is it. And it is gross that we've seen this become like the brand. It's what's trending. Media is using it as a way to get clicks now, and we're the first ones to get the body cams out. Like I'm gonna be honest, I was surprised how fast the Amir Locke video came out. It was 2 days. That was 2 days from the time he was released, or that he was killed, that the video was released. I was like, that is interesting, because usually it takes like months upon months upon months upon months upon months before we see it, if we do. So whoever releases it first now is like, wow, okay. And yep, and it's usually edited, it's botched, it's cut, it's like cut right where the real situation happens. You don't get to see the rest of it. Like, but I mean, there it was, like plain as day. And watching the press conference in Minnesota was absolute trash. Like, I don't even know what happened with that. Just, you're being asked genuine questions about the situation. and you honestly don't even know the details that you should know if you are going to barge into someone's house and, I don't know, murder them. So if you don't even have the basic information on why you would even enter someone's house, which you shouldn't, but here we are, we got no knock warrants. Do you not understand why people would be enraged? Like, this is, you can say saying all the correct words is not, it never has and will not suffice. We can't receive it. It's not genuine. It's never been genuine. And it's gonna have to stop. It's gonna have to stop. I mean, I don't want to have to sit here and realize the number of people. I could read through this list, man. I mean, Michael Lee, Darius Taver, William Green, Linnell Morris, Ahmaud Arbery, Reggie Payne, Manuel Ellis, like, Breonna Taylor, Daniel Prude. I mean, geez, Deion Johnson. I'm skipping names, guy. Like, Jamel Floyd. These are young folk. These are kids. Priscilla Slater, Rashard Brooks. I mean, come on. Brayla Stone was only 17. Julian Lewis. Anthony McLean. I mean, it's just like, why? Like, where Elijah McClain even? Like, where's is there a whole website for all the white people that are getting shot? Like, the fact that we can even have a list of like the running Black obituary of America. Like, come on. Like, this shouldn't even be a thing. This shouldn't be a thing. And the audacity of evangelicals, I'm calling them out. I'm sorry. The audacity of evangelicals right now, of white Christians, is, it's so gut wrenching to say, like, that, especially those of we're Black Christians, and to have to be standing in a space that we're reading the same text, and the interpretation of this text is so drastically different that you feel left just questioning so many things. Like, you start to go, now I see why Black Americans are denouncing, or just Black people, not even just Black people all across the lands are like, why are we still claiming ourselves to be Christians if this is what white evangelicals call Christianity? I don't want to be a part of that crazy. I'm bouncing. This is not it. This is not it. I'm not coming back. You can't convince me to come back. It's a crap show. And we're not doing this. You can't even be mad. You can't be mad. You can't be mad at all. That is what's happening, which is painful, understanding the history of the Black church. I don't know if you guys have watched PBS's series on the Black church that was released last year. It is still on PBS's website. I advise every single person who listens to this podcast to watch that series. Literally, if it makes you uncomfortable, sit in that, okay? Because it's real. It's true. And it unveils things that you didn't want to hear. And too bad you need to hear it, because if you want to understand the context of what's happening, what's still happening, why people keep saying this is racism, and you want to figure out why you're tired of hearing that if you're white, watch that. Watch that. Understand why, especially Black Christians in America and even in Canada, just Black Christians who are still claiming to be Christian are having a very difficult time associating with the white evangelicals that are doing things in the name of Christianity to say that they deserve these rights, that they deserve to have this, that they deserve to live this way, or the right to just pretend that it's not happening. The right to just, I don't feel like knowing about this. I don't feel like this serves my purpose today. So I'm just going to pretend it's not happening. And I'm really sorry that you're in pain. Like that, if we don't know our history because it's been so strategically blocked from our knowledge, and having to hunt for it should have never happened. But here we are. But now there's enough out there. You can't even claim ignorance anymore. If you're claiming ignorance, it's intentional. So black, white, green, brown, or orange, if you are breathing, you need to understand what is happening in America. I'm going to throw this out there and say that what's happening in America affects the entire globe because of the political power that America has. If you don't think where you are is affected by this, take a page out of Canada's book, okay? Like this cesspool that we continue to swirl ourselves in America is directly attached to how we do policy throughout the entire globe. So sit in that, whether you're American or not, sit in that, because the reins that America has to drive the world are bloody. They're bloody. It's like allowing a mass murderer who we've all known committed the crime, go ahead and just be your president. Like that that is what we've done as a nation, is allow ourselves to basically be this presidential force in the world, and we pull the reins, and the reins are saturated in the blood that is on the nation's hands. It's not, you can't wipe it off. There's not enough soap and water, hand sanitizer, none of it to get it off. It's there. The reins are saturated. It's drippy. It's not dried. Some of it's dried. It's still drippy though, which means it's fresh. So I'm tired. I'm still tired. I was tired with Ahmaud and Breonna and George, Insurrection, Dante. Like I was tired. Now I'm fatigued, angry, nervous. I mean, I think of my brothers. I think of you, Greg. Like, can't even wear a hoodie. You can't even lock your door at night. What does that serve anymore? Like, whether you locked your door or not, somebody trying to come in. Can't even fall asleep on my own couch or in my armrest. Can't even just chill. That makes no sense to me. And it's scary. the level of profiling. You can't even you can't even be well spoken, if you will. You can't even not sound black, if you will, and be profiled. Before we go, I was the other day I was watching Dr. Phil, and I had only been on the episode had just released like 30 minutes prior, and it was of this black family who was concerned for their mother who was being scammed um, with some timeshare situation. Eloquent women, just a group of strong black women concerned for their black mother. And so, of course, I like to see what's going on in the comments. And I get to a comment, like you could literally just go on there. It's still there. It's not like it's gone. But the comment basically said by a white man on a public platform, like the Dr. Phil's YouTube page. He said, well, nobody ever accused blacks of being clever. That's it. A one-liner. Bold, blatantly racist. And I go to see, like, okay, what kind of guy is this? Let me go look at his page. What types of videos is he watching? What does he look at every day? What news does he fuel himself with? And it's pretty much just YouTube pages of how black people have hurt white people, or like the evils of black people on white people. And this is his narrative. This is his story that he gets to tell himself every day. Every day. And he lives this out. And so I saw that and got angry because I had a flashback of 2020 when some of the football players, the NFL players, it's the time that we're recording this, Super Bowl is happening, okay? 2020, some of the NFL football players started speaking out and saying that the NFL is literally like, it's like structured like slavery. And they are deeply impacted by that. And evangelicals that I know personally, that I grew up with, that helped to raise me in the church, mocked these black men on the premise that they have money and said, how can you talk about racism when you're rich? Oh, I wish I had money like you. I'm sorry. There's not a number. There's no amount of money that can buy out racism. I can't put a down payment and then never experience racism ever again. That is not a thing. Oprah experiences racism. Will Smith experiences racism. The president of the United States, Obama, had KKK threats. They wanted to hang the man. The amount of security that he needed. I was waiting for him to get shot when he had to do his inauguration speech, because I was like, the number of threats he's already had and he hasn't even gotten to the podium yet. I will be shocked if he lives through his inauguration speech from the things that have come out as an anger that he's even the president. Friends of mine who just the night that he was elected were chased down the streets of Chattanooga, Tennessee by white men who were calling them the N-word, all because we had a black president. Like, unnecessary. Even with Trump, when Trump was elected, friends of mine were chased down the streets of Chattanooga, Tennessee for being Black and saying they're going to take their country back. Why would they do that? You didn't see them chasing other white kids? Like, come on. Come on. This podcast is about learning together how to take steps towards becoming the best versions of ourselves. One of the best steps that we can take is being honest. Honesty allows for us to illuminate the path that we're even on. Choosing to not be honest, choosing to turn a blind eye, allows you to fool yourself that your eyes have adjusted to the darkness and that you're living your best life. When in fact, you're stepping in the blood that has spilt and continues to spill over. You would never know you have blood on your shoes until you turn the light on. We have to turn the light on. It is dire that people start to recognize the influence that America has not only had in its own nation, but throughout the entire world. And that they've just been spreading blood everywhere. Just everywhere. It's gross. It smells really bad. It's like a wound that just wasn't addressed. There's pus. Like it's really gross, guys. But this is why we talk about it. And this is why I wanted to have an honest conversation with just Black people today. I've done it to where people can come to the table and sit with us and have this conversation and hear what we have to say and try to understand and learn. But I also wanted people to hear what it's like to just be Black people with Black people having Black people conversations. This is what it sounds like. These are the things that we question. These are the things that we get angry about. And those of us in this group, most of us have white spaces to go back to in the morning. Some of us have white churches to go back to. And we have to figure out how to live out the gospel with people who don't even know or choose to sit in our place with us. That they have no problem singing a song as long as we're singing a song that fits their narrative. Like, it's a lot, but for some reason, I'm still hopeful. And I'm going to say that's probably the Jesus in me. Because the me, not sure if I'm that merciful. Just honestly. But the Jesus in me is merciful. And he died for everyone, including those that persecute you. So, on that note, thank you guys so much for listening to today's episode. We'll keep having conversations like this. And hopefully, this is beneficial. And if this is difficult to listen to, good. Discomfort does us good sometimes. Sit in the discomfort to listen. And seek in your heart for the space that holds empathy. Search deep. because hearts create the system. The system didn't just come there on its own. It was created by people. So check your heart, check your thoughts, check the messaging you get every day. Pay attention. And find empathy. Faith, Greg, Kel, thanks for talking with me today. We'll obviously keep talking, as we always do. But thanks for allowing people to sit in on our conversation. And yeah, we'll talk soon, guys. Thanks. Bye.